I was speaking to a white gentleman once about slavery in America. And I suggested that if the situation, I was trying to identify, because I try to understand the mindset of an individual, rather than simply condemn the whole process. I condemn slavery and all the evil people that had slaves, because if the situation was reversed, I might own slaves myself. I wouldn't be bad or evil, but let's just, not with the understanding and insight that we have today, considering a circumstance, but considering if you were in that situation, that circumstance then. And this white guy was, he thought I meant if I could have black slaves. No. What I was saying, if white people were the slaves and black people were running things, I would probably have slaves. He kind of misunderstood. That was kind of interesting. Unfortunately, I didn't get that he misunderstood until after we had already gone our separate ways. But he totally thought I meant that if I could have had black slaves. No, I meant if the situation was reversed and white people were slaves, I would probably have had slaves. And then the reason I've told my daughter this, and she was like, really incensed with me, and I had to explain to her that you have to try to understand what the people were thinking at the time. That if you were in a land, now I have to differentiate between the people the white people that were living in America compared to the white people that were actually the ones who captured or purchased or however they acquired the slaves from Africa. Now to give this analogy, to try to understand, I'm going to switch it, okay? So black people are in this land, and you have black shippers, people that have ships, and there's a slave trade where they're going into Europe and picking up all these Europeans, white folks, and bringing them to the land where the black folks are, civilly trying to create a new land, okay? And so the consideration is that you've taken your ships to this other continent, captured these white people, put them in this boat, head to foot, for an efficient cargo storage, which is totally inhumane. And you've taken them over a 6-month journey to a new world. So these people on this trip who have died, who have suffered, who have been sick, who have been terribly and heinously treated, even raped, molested, murdered, tortured, killed, and all that they are traumatized when they finally arrive in the new world. Tremendously traumatized. I mean, imagine that. You could imagine that. Where their minds would be, where their psyche would be, what kind of people they would be when they arrived at this place after that long journey. They would be crazy looking. They would be animalistic. As well, showing up in the new land, in tattered clothes, no clothes, soiled clothes, filthy, stinking, hair matted, nasty, simply because of the circumstance of their transportation and treatment, and the trauma of it all. And then to arrive in a land where people are just civil, dressed well, somewhat bathed, and living normal lives, normal jobs. And these people that are crazy looking and traumatized don't even speak the same language. So even trying to communicate, it's gibberish. You, as a black civilized man with these white people that were just dropped off on this shore and auctioned off, led off the boats in chains, tattered clothes, and filth, you wouldn't see them as being as civilized as you, okay? And now you have an opportunity to acquire some of these that are not quite human like you, and get them to be the bearers of your burdens, do all the toil, all the negative chores, all the negative jobs, work in your fields, create revenue for your nation. Come on, who wouldn't do that? Most people would, regardless of race, regardless of your race, regardless of the race of the people. And so when I say that if I were back in those days and the situation was reversed and white people were the chattel, white people were the slaves, I would probably own a whole bunch of them. From not now with what I know now, but trying to honestly consider what I would be thinking then, given what I would be facing coming off those ships, okay? So I'm just suggesting then that it's important to recognize the ignorance not only of the people who were captured to this new world, but the tremendous ignorance of the people who put them in bondage, okay? And so I can understand that. Now today is a new day. It's a new age, where the descendants of those white people and the descendants of black people recognize the heinousness of what happened back then, okay? And even so, as I tell some folks today, whites and black folks, is that we are the ones that need to take up the reins and handle our own business. If there's equality that we want, we have to take it. If there's justice that we want, we have to make it. Whatever it is that is ours, we have to appropriate it. We cannot expect that it's going to be given, okay? And so far, we've even done a pretty good job. As dismal as it may seem, some of our communities are kind of jacked up. There is a lot of crime, but there's crime everywhere. There's the same ratio of black on black crime as the ratio of white on white crime, brown on brown crime, red on red, yellow on yellow. People commit crimes against folks in their own communities, in their own neighborhoods, in their own, pretty much in their own areas. But if you consider this, that most black folks in this nation are the descendants of slaves, most. And most white folks are not the descendants of slaves. Now, just to be clear, most white folks didn't have slaves. Most white folks were poor as dirt, okay? The wealthy white folks had slaves. And some black folks had slaves as well. Okay, many white folks worked side by side black folks in the cotton and the tobacco fields, okay? They just weren't slaves. In a sense, they were like white inwards, okay? Simply. But they weren't slaves. So now we have 107, we have 200, even 300 years later and more, that now black folks are on the same economic level and surpassing, many white folks. There are a lot of poor white folks across this nation. And we see black CEOs, we see black millionaires, black billionaires, we see a black president of the United States, black congressmen, black senators, black Supreme Court justices, black, generals, black everything, okay? So we ain't even talking about sports and entertainment, but just whatever black folks have put their hand to, very wealthy black folks are actually just at the same level as white folks in this nation. There are lower economic class black folks, lower economic white folks. There are middle class white and black. There are upper white and black. There are extremely upper white and black. Just understand that. So in a sense, even though the descendants of slaves and the descendants of those who were not slaves, at this particular point on the same level, that speaks a lot to the creativity and the ingenuity of black folks to have taken such a dismal start beginning, coming to the point that we're at today. Now, as I suggested earlier, there was this PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that we attribute, to GIs coming back, say, from Afghanistan for 2 or 3 years, or Iraq or whatever, and we recognize from the heinous observations and experiences that it kind of messes with their minds a little bit, and we care for them. So we'll give them certain medicine, certain counseling, certain help, and to get educated, to become successful in life, okay? But what I'm suggesting today is there is a generational PTSD that's never been dealt with in the black community. Okay, so when you have the heinous treatment of these blacks now coming off these ships, then that whole scenario that I described when I gave my analogy of white people being captured, but this is what actually happened to black folks. Of course they had PTSD once they arrived to this nation. And then being slaves, and then being tortured, then being raped, then being separated, sold, and all this stuff. You had tremendous PTSD going on that was never satisfied, that was never addressed. And so now these folks that are mentally messed up from PTSD, from all this mess, now they have kids that are born into that environment, to parents who are already jacked up into a situation that was heinous. And then we had the next generation, continuous generation, to what we have today. So what I'm suggesting today is when you have GIs coming back from 3 years in combat, those experiencing PTSD, they're acting kind of strange. They might be even doing some criminal activity, might be into some self-destructive acts. We know the suicide rate among those is very high, so there is a self-destructive mentality and attitude. What I'm suggesting is, so today when we condemn black people who are living lives that are substandard and self-destructive and maybe some black-on-black crime, we have to recognize this is a result of a generational PTSD that has never been dealt with. We deal with the GIs coming back from those experiences, just them. But we have never addressed the PTSD generationally that's happened to black people. So to me, whatever the issues you see black people experiencing today that might be self-destructive, come on, they're here. They've survived the trauma of generational PTSD, and they are still here. And what you're seeing are the symptoms, the effects of that, okay? And so many other black people, we've built ourselves up to a place of equality and even surpassing most white people in this nation. You know, I know my wife is college educated. She has a bachelor's degree from Miami University. I'm college educated. I have an MBA. My son is college graduated. My daughter is on the track with her desires to become a PhD. So I'm just, and most of our friends the same, okay? So I'm just suggesting that given the history we have in this nation and the PTSD that was never dealt with, that so many black folks are successful, are doing well, and are middle class and up, and those that are not are simply a result of the PTSD that has never been dealt with. This is a reality of success in the black community.